This is Lauri from Civitta, and Grete is also here, but I am doing the presentation today. And I would like to welcome all you here. And today's webinar is about situation of alternative financing in Central Eastern Europe and South Europe regions. Also, please note that this webinar is being recorded. And if you have any questions during my presentation, then please write them into the chat box, and I will try to check it during this presentation. Okay, as I see from the attendance list, we have some listeners from outside of our consortium. Then I'll make a short introduction of the Altfinator project. Altfinator is capacity building of the financial ecosystem and its participants for improving innovative SMEs access to alternative forms of finance in Europe, with focus of South Europe and Central Eastern Europe. And some facts about the project. Project's duration is 24 months. It started in May 2018 and it will last to April 2020. And the budget is almost 1.5 million euros, and funding comes from Horizon 2020, which is the biggest EU research and innovation program. And Altfinator consists of 11 partners from 12 countries. And you can also visit our website, altfinator.eu. Okay, here we have a just short reminder of the timetable of our webinars. This is the second one in the series, and the next ones will be presented in February and March. Right now we have planned 4 these type of trainings, but who knows, maybe we'll do some sessions more in the future. Okay. So today's webinar is divided into 4 blocks. Firstly, I'll provide an overview of our research. Then I'll talk a little bit of general situation in alternative financing. And after that, I'll present different country profiles. And finally, there will be some conclusions. Okay, and we can start with the research overview. So the first question is, what do we define as alternative financing? And alternative financing refers to financial channels, processes, and instruments that have emerged outside of the traditional finance system, such as regulated banks and capital markets. And examples are like bank loans, company bonds, or IPOs, or stock market more generally. And these instruments are not suitable for innovative SMEs or startups, so they need to find different funding options. And alternative financing can be the solution for them. So here we have divided alternative financing into 2 groups. One group is traditional types of alternative financing, and most popular are business angels and venture capital funds. And then there are online alternative financing platforms, and most popular are reward crowdfunding, equity-based crowdfunding, and debt crowdfunding. Although peer-to-peer business lending is also quite popular. Yep. Now I'll give you a short introduction about the research, what we made in Civitta here. The objective of the internet research was to gain a broad overview of the target alternative financing ecosystems. We collected that data on alternative financing providers to gauge the size and features of the alternative financing market in terms of number of alternative financing providers and the availability of different types of instruments. And we interviewed total 39 experts in the core countries to collect their insights, views, and opinions based on their experience with the alternative financing market and SME access to finance in their countries. The interviews enabled us to collaborate and fill gaps in the information that was collected during the first stage of internet research. And this mapping exercise allows to identify the main areas where the project can make the greatest impact. And output is an overview of alternative financing in the CEE and CEE regions and detailed analysis of core countries. Here we have a geographical scope of Altfinator. As you can see, dark blue countries are Altfinator's outreach countries, and light blue countries are core countries. And as you can see, our core countries are Romania, Ukraine, Italy, Hungary, Portugal, Slovakia, Spain, and Lithuania. This distinction is part of Altfinator's approach to achieving broader regional level impact by implementing country level capacity building plans in the core countries with further engagement activities in outreach countries. Okay, that was the introduction part. Do you have any questions, or we can move to general situation in alternative financing? Okay, I see no questions so far. That's okay. Then we can move on. Here we have overview of Europe's market. As you can see, UK is dominating the market with quite significant margin. Western and Northern European regions, you can see alternative financing is thriving, and the SMEs have multiple financing options. Okay, and Altfinator target countries in terms of population, Italy, Spain, and Portugal. However, their combined market volume of 260 million euros still places them below the third largest market, which is Germany. And also everybody else are lagging behind UK, who holds over 80% of Europe's alternative financing market. And on the other hand, Central Eastern European countries, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republic amounts to 132 million euros, equivalent to the Spanish market. And as you can see, the markets of the southeastern region have the lowest figures for both indicators as market volume by country and market volume per capita. Here we have the total number of providers by type of alternative financing that were mapped in the target countries. And also, please note that in cases where one alternative financing provider offers multiple types of alternative financing, only one type of alternative financing was recorded. And as you can see from the table, venture capital funds, business angels, and reward crowdfunding are the most widely spread alternative financing options in the regions. And in terms of online platforms, The most widely available type is reward crowdfunding, followed by equity-based crowdfunding and invoice trading. And here we have a comparison of online alternative financing platforms versus traditional alternative financing providers. And as we discussed earlier, what we label as traditional alternative financing was much more present when compared to online platforms. And we can add to that in the majority of the target countries, traditional types of alternative financing dominate. For example, in Hungary, Albania, and Serbia, there are no online providers. And Bulgaria, Portugal, Moldova, Ukraine, and Greece have a low percentage of online providers comparing with traditional providers. Only Italy and Czech Republic have more online providers, and approximately 2/3 of the total number of alternative financing providers recorded in the target countries were traditional, as we can say. Okay, here we have a number of platforms per Altfinator target regions. And as you can see, we have divided target regions into 3 categories. And they are South Europe, Central Eastern Europe, and Southeastern Europe. And from that table, we can conclude that Southern Europe is leading in the more common types of alternative financing and also has highest number of reward crowdfunding and equity-based crowdfunding platforms. Most impressive is their lead in equity-based crowdfunding section, where they have 35 platforms compared to 7 in Central Eastern Europe and 2 in Southern Eastern Europe. Central Eastern Europe region has the highest number of invoice trading, business-to-business lending, family offices, and finance leasing. And Southeastern countries are far behind of the other regions in all types of alternative financing. And here we have identified 3 main categories of challenges, which are regulations and role of government, lack of knowledge, awareness, and education. This is one of the main problems, in my opinion. And third one is risk aversion and lack of trust. And we can also state that some elements from all 3 clusters of challenges were identified in all our core countries. However, across the group of countries, the severity and the combination of factors varies, and therefore each country requires tailored solutions and also presents unique opportunities. Now we can move on to country profiles. Do we have any other questions? As I see it from the chat box, it's empty right now. Okay, then we can move on. Here we have individual analysis of the 8 core countries. And the experts from core countries were interviewed to collect their insights, views, and opinions based on their experience with the alternative financing market and SMEs' access to finance in their countries. And also please note that this classification is highly subjective, but in my opinion, it's most suitable regarding the results that came from our research. And as you can see, I've divided the countries into 3 groups. Spain and Italy belong to the first group, which is labeled as most developed. Second group is medium development, and the only participant in that group is Lithuania. Third group is named less developed, and there are Portugal, Slovakia, Hungary, Romania, and Ukraine. And currently they are less developed, but I think these countries have a great potential in the future. Okay, and now we can move on to the individual country profiles, and first is Spain. As you can see, we have pointed out some strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats for each country. In Spain, the alternative financing market is highly fragmented with a lot of small players and only a few providers gaining more competitive positions. Despite the large number of providers, the prevalent view among experts is that innovative SMEs are still underfinanced. And it means more providers, more money, and more diversity of alternative financing options are needed. So if anybody is looking for a business ideas, there is still room for entering into the market. As you can see, one weakness we have pointed out was major SMEs lack awareness. And I think the main opportunity we pointed out here is leveraging cooperation within alternative financing ecosystem. And here we have provided several ways to support the growth of alternative financing in Spain. And in the context of the gradual loosening of cross-border barriers, American alternative financing providers with their stronger economic resources and attractive value propositions are considered as a serious competitor to local providers in Spain and in other South European markets. The emergence of larger local alternative financing providers is thus important to maintain a position on the market. One way to achieve that are mergers, and that way is possible to create significant competitors to American companies. In last slide, one opportunity pointed out was leveraging cooperation within alternative financing ecosystem. By that, we mean that different market participants should do some cooperation in the field of alternative financing. Other ways to support the growth are raise awareness and offer trainings to alternative financing providers and SMEs and also to the investors. And it is possible to promote success stories in alternative financing and also introduce tax initiatives for micro investors in the alternative financing. Next country is Italy. Italy enjoys a relatively good availability of alternative financing in terms of the variety of instruments on the market. The most popular instruments are venture capital, business angels, networks, and equity crowdfunding. And also SMEs can access to numerous local reward crowdfunding platforms and several invoice trading and peer-to-peer business lending platforms. But still, equity capital is easily available in the main investment hubs, and here we mean Milan, Bologna, and Turin. But in the rest of the Italy, access to networks and capital remains difficult. One weakness is weak entrepreneurial and investment culture, and to tackle that problem, there should be a good educational materials for Italians like MOOCs, webinars, and so on. And experts agree that alternative financing is fundamentally important in expanding access to finance by enabling access to capital throughout the business phases, as Italian economy is dominated by small SMEs. And here are some suggestions to support the alternative financing field. In Italy, we have pointed out that it is necessary to reduce bureaucracy, broaden tax initiatives, and also enable large pension funds invest fixed percentages into alternative financing instruments. For example, in Estonia, some banks are doing it already. And also it is crucial to raise awareness among SMEs about alternative financing. And examples are like accelerators and incubators. Okay, now we can move to the second group, which is Lithuania. And I think the main strength of Lithuania is a well-educated and tech-savvy workforce. And also Lithuania is leader in ICOs in the world after the United States and China. But because of inadequate legislation system, most Lithuanian ICOs are established in the UK, Estonia, or Singapore. And also we have noted that VC funding is the prevailing instrument on the alternative financing market and is steadily growing. And also Lithuania boasts an impressive number of peer-to-peer lending platforms and invoice trading companies, which are rather uncommon in this region. Yep, we can move on. And alternative financing can bring a lot of positive changes to the overall business environment. It will help SMEs to grow and develop and pay more taxes to the state. And also we think that in Lithuania there should be increased knowledge and awareness about the advantages of alternative financing through several different events like marketing campaigns, conferences, and trainings delivered to specific target groups. Now we can move on to the last group, and the first country from that group is Portugal. And here we can say that the alternative financing ecosystem in Portugal can be described as emerging. But still some barriers to SME access to alternative financing persists, particularly in the areas of regulation, awareness, and education. And as we have noted, one strength is reforms to improve business environment, for example, such as a reduction of the time and cost to register a company. And the growth of the sector is hindered by weak trust, lack of legislation, and immaturity both of investors and entrepreneurs. But experts agree that alternative financing will become even more important in the future once there is more trust in the sector. And also Portugal's phenomenon is that there are a quite large network of business angels, and through them companies can raise money. Okay, moving on to Slovakia. Innovative SMEs more often use platforms headquartered or operating outside of Slovakia to raise money. In addition to popular international platforms like Kickstarter or Indiegogo, several Czech providers operate in Slovakia like Keiretsu and 42 Angels. But in Slovakia, the key strengths are thriving startup culture and talented workforce. And threats are outflux of investors and entrepreneurs to other markets due to lack of local opportunities. And although traditional providers dominate the financial market, experts consider alternative finance to have positive impact on improving SME access to finance, have big growth potential. And also in Slovakia, we would recommend to raise awareness of alternative financing options in Slovakia. Also provide economic benefits for investors like tax exemptions, and crucial part of alternative financing development is education of investors through several like materials, MOOCs and so on. Okay, moving on to Hungary. Hungary's strength is lowest corporate tax and labor tax rate among EU 28. And this could be one key factor for establishing business or low taxes. But comments about alternative financing on the supply side, the majority of potential investors lack experience, skills, and international networks. And one of the main threats we are pointed out are low financing in pre-seed stage stops the pipeline of innovative projects. And in Hungary, there are no laws specifically designed for regulating alternative financing, but based on the Hungarian central bank regulations, any AF provider should be registered as a financial institution, which essentially closes the path for crowdfunding. And these strict regulations hinder the emergence of the alternative financing market. And here our suggestions are to reform these strict regulations, also provide educational initiatives for SMEs, alternative financing providers, investors, and also to the younger generation. And one suggestion is to organize matchmaking events between policymakers, banks, and also SMEs and alternative financing providers. Moving on to the next country, which is Romania. In Romania, there are very few types of alternative financing available, and there are less than 10 providers in total. And also one thing that came up through our research was that traditional and online alternative financing providers tend to invest in different sectors. For example, crowdfunding is mostly represented in non-tech fields, but VCs and business angels usually target the ICT sector, which is information and communication technology. And there is much higher competition to receive funding in the last sector. And also collaboration between traditional finance and alternative financing is in very early stages. And the main threat that we have pointed out is political instability. And one of the opportunity would be better education for entrepreneurs. Here we can state that Romanian laws state that lending can be done by financial institutions that have central bank license, and lending without the license is treated as a crime. And according to Romanian regulations, if money comes from crowdfunding platforms, the company, by request of the National Tax Agency, has to provide a source of donors to ensure compliance with anti-money laundering rules. And ways to support the growth of alternative financing in Romania would be adjust the legal framework to eliminate existing legal barriers and decrease bureaucracy, and also awareness raising campaigns for alternative financing providers, SMEs, and investors. And now we have here Ukraine. And experts characterize the availability of alternative financing in Ukraine as limited. And some experts even state that alternative finance providers cannot be established and exist within the framework of the Ukrainian law. And there are very few types of alternative financing instruments on the market, and financing is almost exclusively provided through traditional alternative financing providers like VCs, family offices, and business angels. And also local crowdfunding platforms have low capacity, and getting funding at the idea stage is extremely hard. In strengths, we can point out that in Ukraine there is a large and highly educated population, and mainly there are IT and engineering experts. Weaknesses are lack of resources by regulators, and by that we mean they don't have resources to develop a strong legal framework and fraud prevention rules. And also in opportunities, we can see that EU-Ukraine deep and comprehensive free trade agreement oblige regulatory authorities to harmonize the local legal framework with European standards in the area of alternative financing. And but work on the legal framework that would make the provision of alternative financing legal in Ukraine is already in progress, and there is a commitment to finalize it by 2020. This is being done due to Ukraine's obligations under EU and the same trade agreement I just said. Despite alternative financing not having a strong position in Ukraine at present, experts expect it to grow quite rapidly in the future. And as Ukraine has a weak banking system and is unlikely to have a well-developed stock market, alternative financing can fill this gap in access to financing. And ways to support the growth of alternative financing in Ukraine are develop an adequate legal framework, organize different events, and one thing could be establish sustainable accelerator programs, but this is out of the scope of Altfinator's project. But I think that Ukrainians should think about it. Okay, this was some sort of detailed analysis of our core countries. We have some questions meanwhile. I see chat box is still empty. Okay, that's fine. We can move on to summary. Okay, here we have conclusions. And as stated before, core problems were grouped into three main categories, which are regulation and role of government, lack of knowledge, awareness and education, risk aversion and lack of trust. And they were presented in each of the core countries in some ways. I think all of them are important, but in my personal opinion, the second one, lack of knowledge, awareness and education, is the cornerstone of everything. When we can make improvements in this field, then I think that it is much easier to make progresses in the first and last section. And as you saw from the country profiles, every country has different profile, and therefore they need tailored solutions to boost alternative financing. And that's what we are doing here in Altfinator, and we will try to improve alternative financing ecosystem in these countries. Okay. For further information, you can download our full report of alternative financing ecosystem, and it is a 70 pages long report, and there are much more additional information about this topic. And also you can visit our website, altfinator.eu, and our website is under development, and soon there will be many additional useful tools for SMEs and alternative financing providers, like matchmaking tool and interactive map of alternative financing providers. Okay, that's all by me. Do you have any questions now? Okay, we have one question from Dmitry. I was wondering if the classification of countries can follow a sort of more explanatory typology, such as the maturity model proposed by Ronald in his webinar. Okay, I must say that it could be that way. Okay, then we have another question from Janne. There are some project initiatives with integrating Interreg Central Europe program. They deal with the topic of crowdfunding or other funding possibilities. And for examples are Arctic Crowdfund Port Project. Do you have any contact with the representatives from these initiatives? To my best knowledge, we don't have any contact with them, but we can look it up and give you additional info. Okay, now Ronald from Crowdfunding Hub has written that he has contact with Crowdfund Port. Okay, and Jan and Roland, you can communicate in the chat with this topic. Do we have any other questions or suggestions or ideas or anything else? It looks like no. Okay, Jan, thank you. No further questions, but if we don't have any questions, then I think we can call this webinar off. I would like to thank you all for participating, and see you soon.